In the eastern reaches of the world, where green valleys met mountains of silver mist, stood the kingdom of Eryndor. Its capital was a marvel of stone and song, with high walls carved from pale granite and towers capped with banners that rippled in the wind. The kingdom had known both glory and grief, fertile harvests and bitter wars, festivals that rang with laughter and winters that broke the weak. When King Eryndor ruled, the people lived in quiet fear. Eryndor loved conquest more than compassion. He levied heavy taxes to fund campaigns, enriched the nobility, and left farmers in debt so deep that some sold their children as servants. Markets thrived for the rich, but villages starved in silence. By the time Eryndor died, rebellion smoldered in every corner of the land. His son Darius was young, barely 22, when he ascended the throne. Many whispered he would not last long, that he would be swallowed by greedy nobles or torn apart by hungry mobs. But when he sat upon the throne of ivory in his first council, something in his eyes silenced the room. He carried none of his father's arrogance. His gaze was steady, his voice calm, but beneath it there was iron. "My father ruled with fear and coin," he told the court. "I will rule with fairness. No law shall weigh heavier for the poor than the rich. No voice shall be dismissed because it speaks from a cottage instead of a palace. In this hall, justice will sit higher than kings." The lords and ladies shifted uneasily. Some scoffed, others smiled politely, thinking this youthful king would soon learn the world was not so simple. But among the common folk, hope stirred like the first light of dawn. Darius began by opening the royal court twice a week to anyone, peasant, merchant, or noble, who wished to bring a dispute. On those days, the hall was crowded. A farmer came to complain that his neighbor's goats destroyed his crops. A widow begged for mercy against a landlord who demanded double rent. Apprentices sought protection from cruel masters. Darius listened to them all, not rushing, not dismissing. His counselors frowned at such petty matters, yet Darius reminded them, a kingdom is not only made of crowns and swords. It is built upon the lives of its smallest voices. If injustice festers in a cottage, it will one day reach the palace. The people began to call him not just king, but the just. One case soon defined his reign in its early years. A nobleman, Lord Careth, accused a humble blacksmith named Brand of stealing a silver goblet from his treasury. The goblet, engraved with Careth's crest, had been found on Brand's workbench. Shackled and terrified, Brand swore he had never seen it before. His wife clutched their infant son in the gallery, her face pale with fear. Careth thundered, demanding Brand's punishment, exile or even death. Most kings would have granted it, if only to appease a powerful lord. But Darius studied the goblet carefully. It gleamed too brightly, as though freshly polished, odd for a blacksmith's sooty hut. He questioned the guard who found it, and the man admitted it lay openly on the bench, as if displayed. "Strange," Darius murmured. "A thief who steals silver would hide it or melt it down. Why leave it in plain sight?" Brand swore again that he was innocent. Darius ordered an inquiry, not led by nobles, but by 3 commoners chosen at random, a miller, a seamstress, and a stable hand. The nobles sneered at the insult, but the king would not yield. 3 days later, the townsfolk returned with truth that shook the court. They discovered Lord Careth's steward had deep gambling debts. Pressured by his master, he confessed he had planted the goblet in Brand's hut on Careth's orders, seeking to ruin a man who once shamed the lord in a quarrel. The hall erupted. Careth turned pale. Lies. All lies. But the steward's trembling words rang true. Darius stood, his voice resonant. If justice bows before wealth, it ceases to be justice. Careth, you sought to destroy an honest man with deceit. You are stripped of title and land. You will live as those you scorn, laboring for your bread until you learn the worth of fairness. Gasps swept the court. Never before had a king humiliated a noble so publicly. Brand's chains were struck off, and his wife wept as she held him. From that day, the people whispered that the throne of Eryndor could not be bought. But justice is a flame that must be fed, not once, but every day. Years passed, and Darius' reputation spread across kingdoms. Some rulers admired him, others mocked him as weak. Among his own court, nobles who had lost power grew resentful. Secret alliances formed, and plots brewed in candlelit chambers. Then came famine. Crops failed 3 summers in a row. Hunger swept villages, and merchants hoarded grain to sell at 10 times its worth. In desperation, peasants rioted. Advisors urged Darius to send soldiers to seize the hoarded grain and punish the merchants with execution. But Darius walked among the starving himself. He saw mothers breaking bread into crumbs for children, old men collapsing in the fields, hollow-eyed boys begging. He summoned the merchants and said, "You may keep your grain, but you will eat it alone in your locked houses while your people die. Or you may sell it at fair price, and I will honor your names for generations." The merchants hesitated, but when the first wagons rolled at fair prices, the people cheered them as heroes. Others followed, preferring honor over infamy. The famine passed. Next came betrayal. One of Darius' closest counselors, Lord Sunric, plotted with neighboring King Malric to overthrow him. Malric scorned Darius as the king of mercy, claiming mercy breeds weakness. Sunric promised to open the gates of the capital in exchange for wealth and power. But a stable boy overheard whispers of treachery in the night. Terrified, he ran straight to Darius. The king did not dismiss him. Instead, he ordered a quiet investigation. When Sunric's guilt was proved, many cried for blood. But Darius remembered his vow: justice must not turn into vengeance. He spared Sunric's life, yet banished him beyond the borders with nothing but a staff and cloak. "May you live long enough to regret the day you betrayed trust," he said. When Malric finally marched with his army, Darius faced a choice. His generals urged him to burn villages in the enemy's path, to force them into starvation. But Darius refused. "If I win by destroying my own people's homes, I have already lost." Instead, he rallied the villagers with truth. "I cannot promise you ease, but I promise you fairness. I will not take more than I give, nor ask of you what I will not bear myself." The people, who trusted him as a just king, rose like lions. Farmers supplied food, blacksmiths forged weapons, children carried water to soldiers. The war raged for months, but Eryndor's unity was unbreakable. At last, Malric was captured and dragged before Darius. "Kill me and be done," he spat. But Darius only said, "You waged war for greed. I will not stain my throne with vengeance. You shall live without crown or sword, to learn what justice means." Some protested that sparing him was folly, but Darius' choice became legend, mercy that humbled cruelty. As the years turned, his reign grew into an age of peace. Disputes were settled swiftly, corruption punished, and the poor defended. Yet Darius never grew proud. He walked often among his people, listening, asking questions, reminding himself that justice was not an edict, but a daily labor. When at last his hair turned silver, he summoned his daughter, Princess Eryndor, beneath the great oak in the palace garden. "Justice is not a crown you inherit," he told her. "It is a seed you must water every day. It demands listening more than speaking, patience more than pride. Remember this, and Eryndor will endure." Not long after, King Darius died peacefully, his hand resting on the arm of his throne. The people wept for 7 days. Farmers left wheat at the palace gates. Smiths laid down hammers in his honor. Widows carried candles through the streets. They did not mourn only a king. They mourned a man who had made justice live among them. In the years that followed, bards sang of the just king. Children played games of judgment, pretending to sit on his throne. And in the whispers of history, Darius became more than a monarch. He became a lesson that true strength is not in conquest or wealth, but in the courage to hold justice higher than pride. And so the story of King Darius lived on, not as a tale of power, but as a beacon to all rulers who dared to ask, what is a kingdom worth, if not justice?